Tom is 44 years sober.
If I make it to April 7th, man. And my mother was on Dexedrine when I was in utero, so a speed. My dad was an alcoholic, so I probably had booze and speed when I was swilling around down there. I hadn't got out yet. And when I came out, I wasn't breathing. And this little redneck doctor in Northern California thought he'd get me breathing by pouring a little shot of whiskey down my throat.
Wow.
So my first breath was Jack and crack. But you only get so much alcohol in your life. But I did all mine before I was 25. And immediately launched into a program of recovery where you clear away the wreckage of your past so that you can be of service to somebody else.
Yeah.
You've got to be rid of the selfishness or it kills you.
Yeah.
You know, and to be able to harbor some good old justified resentments, man. As soon as somebody does me wrong, if I dwell on that for too long, all of a sudden they've got some friends.
Yeah, right.
And then the person that cuts me off in traffic gets it.
They do.
Ollie Mason coming down the pipe so you can put down the pipe. Call now.
Welcome to School of Rock Bottom with Oliver Mason. I'm an actor, a voiceover artist, and a recovery coach. He's been in recovery many years, and I know firsthand that rock bottom can be the greatest teacher and the springboard for a beautiful life. And as you know, I interview fellow creatives and all inspiring people who have lived through a rock bottom, survived, and thrived. This is a podcast of hope and how to get out of the darkness, into the light, into the joy and the recovery. And that's why I'm so excited, because I've got the tremendous Tom Clarke-Hill in the studio.
It's good to be here, man.
It's so good to see you, Tom. Thanks
too.
so much for coming down.
My pleasure.
Before we dive in, a quick bio. And if you don't know Tom, shame on you, but you will do now. So Tom Clarke-Hill is an actor and musician from California. Tom is voiceover royalty, the voice of Kellogg's Tony the Tiger, with currently 128 credits on IMDb. 128. Now, just for balance, Robert De Niro has 127. So that's a lot. These include, it took me ages to go through IMDb, so I've written a few down. Fantastic Beasts, Sniper Elite, Robozuna, Time Splitters, Terminator, Batman, The Witcher, Wakfu, Alien, Transformers, Lego City, Sonic. I could be here all day. And also, Tom is 44 years, almost 44 years sober.
If I make it to April 7th, man.
You don't look old enough. 44 years, that is incredible.
Bless you.
I know a lot of you will be listening to this and not watching this, but I am doing a big clap. That's remarkable.
Yeah. It is, unless you just picture the Grim Reaper chasing you around with a Jack Daniels T-shirt and white stuff on his lip. It's like fear does it, as well as. But I've got a different life now because I've learned a different way to live.
Yeah. That's amazing. I'm not saying this to make you feel older than me, but that means you've been sober the same amount of time that I've been alive, which is incredible.
Youngsters.
You just don't look old enough, Tom.
Yeah.
Well, we're
Thank
gonna
you.
we're gonna get
It's
into
the
your
Botox.
No,
right.
I don't think you've had Botox.
All right.
You look au naturel, Tom.
Yeah.
You really do. Tom, as you know, has done a lot of voiceover work, and by the end of this podcast, you're going to hope and wish that he was actually the host, because you got a much better voice than me, I tell you.
Yours is good, man.
I know, but he's been leaving me these voice notes on Facebook. We've been talking about this, and it's like I've been listening to them back, and it's like being in a movie. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, it helps because I was born in June, too, so I'm a Gemini, which is roses are red, violets are blue. I'm schizophrenic, and so am I. So I've always had lots of different voices in my head. Right.
Well, we'll definitely dive into your career a bit later as well. But going to start with maybe the most serious question. I've obviously invited you on, Tom, because you've had a rock bottom or maybe more in your life. I wondered if we could start there in the pain and the darkness, and then work our way through that, and then into the light and the joy and how you
absolutely.
got it. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, when you asked me to come on here, and I was thinking, there's a physical, a mental, and a spiritual aspect to my life, and whether other people believe they've got all of that going on. I think we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, and I've seen one of the rock bottoms I had was when my wife died in 2010. And I saw her spirit leave her body. It was amazing. It was terrible, shocking, horrible when it happened. But no one can ever convince me that that's all we are, is just dust in the wind, and that, this is all there is. And, the whole thing, even people that are skeptical, they think, oh man, I haven't talked to so-and-so in 3 years. And all of a sudden the phone rings. They go, what? I was just thinking about you, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I think my physical rock bottom wasn't that long ago. I've had a couple of heart surgeries. and thought if I live through this year, I'm going to be lucky. And my mental sort of rock bottoms were when I was finally beaten by alcohol and drugs at the age of 25. And I'd known it for a while, but I finally did something about it. And I'm going to make sure that I don't try to sound like a spokesperson for any of the 12-step programs, but that's what did it for me. Yeah. And it was somebody shamed me into coming to one of those meetings. And I'd been in one before. And, so if I am a spiritual being floating around in the cosmos, God thought it would be funny to put me into my parents' little petri dish. And my mother was on Dexedrine when I was in utero, so a speed. Oh. My dad was an alcoholic, so I probably had booze and speed when I was swilling around down there. I hadn't got out yet. And when I came out, I wasn't breathing. And this little redneck doctor in Northern California thought he'd get me breathing by pouring a little shot of whiskey down my throat.
Wow.
So my first breath was Jack and crack. Welcome to the world. Yeehaw! So anyway, they talk about when you cross an invisible line into addiction. And there's another thing is like once you start dipping a cucumber into brine, it becomes a pickle. You can never unpickle it. So I know people that I've met in the rooms that could drink socially for years and years and years. And then all of a sudden they started drinking because it relieved them of having to deal with stuff. They start drinking for effect, and then after a while they need it. And then they cross over this line to where they become physically addicted to it. It's like what I was talking about earlier too, that the thing where there's scientific proof that a real alcoholic metabolizes alcohol slower than a normal drinker.
Yeah, yeah.
So, a normal drinker, about an ounce an hour, you give them more than that. And those guys, Joe and Charlie, say, and after that, they start feeling funny. And you give them more than that, they might throw up on you. But for me, it stays as acetone longer in my pancreas or my spleen or my liver or whatever, sets up a physical craving and a mental obsession. So for me, total abstinence was the only thing that could ever fix me.
Wow.
But it took me till I was 25 to do it. And my thing is they go, you took it when you were 25, man? And I say, well, you only get so much alcohol in your life. But I did all mine before I was 25. It was a crash course.
Yeah.
And I was one of those blackout drunks too. It was like, I would fight guys for the car keys. I always had to go somewhere else. You'd be at the best party ever, and I think, no, we got to go there. We got to go there. Everybody get in the car, and then I wouldn't let anyone drive. I had people holding the wheel. I'm barfing out the window at 70 miles an hour. So I wasn't a social drinker, that's for sure. But I didn't know what my problem was, and I started doing these things called geographics.
Yeah.
And that's where I was in Northern California. I thought if I go to L.A., I won't drink as much because I can be creative down there. And I get down there and I probably double up my drinking. And then my cousin calls me from Boston, and he's a bass player. He called me when he was drunk. He says, come back here and study the bass. And so the next day I said, I'm coming. He goes, what are you talking about? No, he remembered. And I go back there. And despite my alcoholism trebling when I got back there, I started playing music professionally. Wow. And you ever seen that Footprints poem?
No.
It's like two sets of footprints in the sand.
Oh, yes, but I've forgotten it.
Yeah, and then when there's only one set of footprints, the guy goes, God, why did you leave me? And he goes, no, son, that's where I carried you. Mm-hmm. And my drinking career was like that. There was like I broke a telephone pole in half with a Volkswagen van, with no engine, hair down on my back, like the hippie van, and telephone pole, shook, like that. Thank you, man. And then in Boston, I did a Christmas gig with some guys, and the last thing I remember was drinking these 8-ounce glasses of Wild Turkey 101 proof bourbon.
Yeah.
And then they let me drive off with the band equipment. I'm blaming them. See, they let me drive off. Next thing I'm bouncing off the center divider right before all the turnstiles, and there's a guy in each one of those. I could have killed him, And I've done some prison service where I've gone in, and there's guys that went out for a drink on a Friday night and they wake up Sunday and somebody's dead. So it's by the grace of God that I'm here and that I'm alive,
Yeah. And you briefly mentioned about a spiritual rock bottom.
Yeah.
Have you?
Well, I think addiction is a spiritual rock bottom. Okay. I think it's a soul-destroying disease. Mm. Alcohol and drugs take your soul. They make it like you just got that film over your feelings, your emotions, and also don't want to take responsibility for anything. Mm. But I just remember when I finally just sobbed and went, oh, please, man, just take this away from me. Something happened. Yeah. And also what I was going to say, though, when I did a geographic to Boston, my drinking increased. And I knew one night after me and this guy had gone out and caused severe havoc. And then I wake up the next day and I can hardly walk, and I twisted my ankle, and we'd almost got shot the night before in front of this pizza parlor about 2 a.m. And he told me what I'd been saying to those people, and I'm lucky to be alive. And so I go to this meeting on Tremont Street in Boston, and there's probably 100 people in there. And I walk in, I look through the door, and I see some guys been sleeping on the street. I go, man, I ain't that bad. 6 years later, I finally make it to a meeting. Wow. So 6 more years of felony drunk driving, Thank God nobody got killed. I do another geographic to California. And by the time I get out there, I can't even get a gig as a musician. Right. I ended up cleaning swimming pools. Wow. And I've cleaned some famous swimming pools. But anyway.
That's another podcast.
James Coburn.
Wow.
James
okay.
Coburn.
That's pretty
Carmen McRae. And right across the street from the Playboy Mansion. Anyway, but I think these guys are the biggest bunch of degenerates I've ever met. And I'm the one that got fired for being drunk on the job.
So were you just in complete denial in those years, or were you kind of aware of it?
I knew it.
Ignoring?
I knew it, but I couldn't imagine life without it.
Yeah.
It was like being addicted to going to the amusement park,
Yeah.
I got to get on the roller coaster, tick, 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 every night, and then vroom, off and running. And also is the big lie where you tell yourself it's going to be different this time.
Yeah.
I call it, bargaining with the terrorist. It's not going to be so bad, I say, I only black out on vodka when it's a full moon. I actually told myself that.
Right.
I can drink vodka unless it's a full moon. Then I've got to drink gin.
Right, okay.
Now that's some sound thinking, man.
Yeah. I mean, this is the kind of things that we do, right? I mean, I got an old friend who had a terrible, terrible weekend on the gin. I mean, nothing funny about it at all. If you can imagine all the kind of worst things that could possibly happen on a weekend drunk, this happened to her.
Yeah.
And she swore off it. She said, I'll never, ever touch a drop again. And then about a month later, she rings me up drunk on the phone.
Yeah.
And I said, are you drunk? She said, no, I'm not drunk. She said, anyway, I've worked out my problem. She said, I am drinking, but I'm now drinking slow gin.
Yep.
she said the problem was gin.
Yeah.
And now I've tweaked it, and I'm going to have slow. And she absolutely believed it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, I laughed because I thought it was a joke, and it was actually true.
Yeah.
And this is what we do.
The Beastie Boys, man, if that song had come out before I got sober, I would have been all over that. You got to fight, plum, plum, for your right, plum, plum, to party. Because we hear every excuse in the book.
Yeah.
So what I was going to say, when I get to L.A., I get fired from that job. And a guy with the Easy Does It bumper sticker pulls up, takes me to a meeting in Brentwood, California. And it's the opposite of the Boston meeting. I see some actors and some musicians. I go, hey, man, you can make some connections here at AA. Oh, I said, you can make some connections here at a 12-step program. Yeah. I am not the spokesman for any 12-step program.
Fine.
Sorry, I let that slip out. But anyway, I thought, yeah. And instead of what I should have been thinking is, I stink, and I'm going to die from this disease if I don't get some help. And I actually stayed dry for 3 months, taking the little chips that you can get in those meetings, and thinking I was sober. And then I called this guy up after 3 months and said, hey, and my sponsor, you get someone to help you through the steps. I said, hey, man, I got a 90-day chip. He goes, well done. He goes, good to hear from you again. What's this been, once a month for 3 months?
Right.
And I said, yeah. And I said, but it's cool. I'm still smoking weed and snorting cocaine and stealing diazepam and stuff like that, right? And he goes, what? And I repeat it. He goes, you may be substituting. I said, yeah.
You think?
So then I set myself in a position where I'll never slip again. I go to Las Vegas on my birthday, start playing blackjack. Would you like a cocktail, sir? And I go, oh, just one. Next thing I know, I'm losing. They don't give me any more free booze. I got a bottle in my girlfriend's purse. I'm off and running again. Yeah. And more, the book where it says pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. I love.
Only good at the end there. Yeah. That was really good. Yeah. You got to a good bass tone there that I could only dream of, Tom.
Just go, demoralization.
Demoralization.
Yeah, that's good, man.
That
was scary.
Is that right?
But anyway, I got to that point where I finally thought, man, I got to get out of this stuff. I get in a band with a trumpet player who's 6 years sober. And I was always a periodic drunk. I wouldn't drink every day because I would black out. Crazy stuff would happen. I was always trying something else. But I would come in on a Monday rehearsal and I would say, oh man, I'm beat up. And he goes, Thursday night, you ought to come to this meeting. And I go, I'll be there, man. And I don't show up because my ego reconstructs by Tuesday or Wednesday. And I do this a couple of times. And finally, I said, oh, Thursday, I'll be there. And he goes, no, you won't. But it's idiots like you that keep me sober. So party on, man. And so I showed up just to spite him, and everything changed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that part of the reason the denial carried on? Because, as you just called it, you were a periodic drunk. Were you sort of referencing, and I'm doing air quotes if anyone's just listening to this, were you referencing dry periods as evidence that it wasn't alcoholism because you weren't drinking every day? Was that part of the narrative of the denial?
It could have been.
Right.
But more or less, it was just I was feeling so guilty and remorseful for whatever had gone on the last period that I laid off. Or I'd just be out of money or out of friends.
Right.
Or both, that sort
so
of thing.
that powerlessness that they talk about in step one, that was going everywhere in your life. That was consumption, behavior, friends, just every facet of your life.
I'm sure you've heard alcohol wasn't a problem, it was a solution.
Yeah, right.
Drugs aren't a problem, they're a solution.
Yeah.
For somebody that doesn't like life on life's terms.
Sure.
And as soon as I had my first drink, I was 11 years old, it just, oh my gosh. Started chatting up the girl down the street. I couldn't even look at her. I was like, hey, Debbie, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah,
So going back to that word solution, what solution did it give you when you were that young? Because it says in step one, doesn't it, that our lives became unmanageable. So it was our solution, and then it became the problem.
Well,
so what did it give you early on that made it a solution to stuff?
I will never say that I had anxiety. That I would never say my anxiety, but I had self-consciousness, big time.
Right.
Even though I would overcome it by being obnoxious sometimes.
Right.
And as soon as I took a drink, that was gone. Fear was gone, and telling somebody what I really thought.
Yeah.
And, sometimes it would be bad consequences, but that's what it did, is it took that away.
Right.
And also, I think that kids that are born into alcoholic families are similar to kids that are born into the families of Holocaust survivors. And they come out full of adrenaline and cortisone. They're ready, like, oh, man. They might not live as long, but they're ready for stuff that's going to be coming down the pike.
Yeah.
And you don't know why. So you're always like, oh, what are they thinking? What are they saying? What's going to happen here? That sort of thing. You have a couple drinks, like, whatever.
Sure. I can relate to that 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just feeling just that little bit more comfortable in my own skin, and just that overthinking just going away. And when you have that reaction to something like alcohol, it becomes logic to then go, where do I get the next one?
Yeah.
It becomes completely logical, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's taken that away.
Or else, just you're powerless over, you make a certain group of friends, and if that's what it's based on, and that's very much what it was based on. And I was a chameleon in high school too, people pleaser, and I played sports, and I'd hang out with the jocks and drink beer and stuff like that, and then I'd hang out with the dope heads across the street. As soon as I got across the street, I'm like, hey, let's go kick their butts on the football field, and I walk across the street. What's happening, man? I'm like Tommy Chong, dude. By the time I get across the street, I'm a different guy, man.
Right.
And I had to deal with that.
And you're like, pass me the weed, man.
Yeah. And I had to deal with that character defect,
Right. Got it.
But, part of it, my defense mechanism was just sarcasm and mocking people and stuff like that, just to get other people to laugh at other people, and that hurt when I realized that I'd done that.
Yeah.
And when I finally got sober and made amends, one of them was to my younger sister, because my older sister could take me out in a couple of sentences. I'd be going, oh my God. Then I'd take it out on this one, and then she would just take it. And the other kids are just like watching like this, Yeah. And I had to tell her, man, I'm sorry for all that stuff I said, because it was part of my defense. Yeah. You couldn't tell the old man what you thought. You get a slap, so you could just be sarcastic and bitter.
Yeah. Well, that's always good.
Yeah.
It sounds as well, sort of when you were in very early recovery and trying to figure a way out of it, and people were sort of, saying, come to this meeting, and then you weren't showing up and then showing up.
Yeah.
It sounded like, from the outside anyway, that your road was quite narrow in the sense of a solution to your alcoholism. The reason I say that is, it feels like there's a lot of choice now for people that want to get sober.
Yeah.
You just go online, you're going to get like a million different ideas of how to do it. Do you think you sort of benefited from someone just kind of pulling you in and going, this is the 12-step way, get your head in there, do this, and you're going to be okay? There's something about that simplicity of it, and sort of having one road to recovery that seemed to benefit you in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, okay.
I was broken enough to take direction.
Yeah.
People can intellectualize things now, and also we're fast fix right now, and people's attention span lasts about 3 to 5 seconds, just like the images on TV. But I was beat bad enough. This guy said, it's not 12 steps really. It's 3 things. It's surrender, clean house, and help others.
Yeah.
That's what the triangle is: recovery, unity, and service.
Yeah.
Is you do the steps, and then you become part of a group. And then you help other people, and that's what keeps you sober, is giving it away again. Yeah. And so I had that hammered into me, and also I wasn't given this long-term thing of like, we'll do this and then we'll think about it. Like they talk about sitting there in a soiled nappy. Okay, I surrender that I can never safely drink again, and here's all the terrible things that I did. Or actually, people stop at that. They try to get a concept of a higher power. And then they sit on that for a while, like they've done some great achievement, but they haven't. The book says to immediately launch into a program of recovery where you clear away the wreckage of your past, so that you can be of service to somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's really clear that you've done that. When I know it was 44 years ago, but there's a real lightness and healing there when you're referencing what happened to you. Well,
it's fresh in my mind, and also because of the pandemic, man, the Zoom was amazing for 12-step meetings.
Yeah,
I'm friends with people all over the world now.
Yeah,
and this format, this podcast thing, I just wanted to praise you on what you're doing, man.
Oh, thank you.
This is great.
Thank you very much.
Because it's and they say that the 12-step programs don't have the monopoly on sobriety, but for me, that the simplicity of it is there. It's just I gotta surrender that I can never truly drink or drug again, because I'll get scientifically I'll get a physical craving and a mental obsession, and it's always going to be bad.
Yeah.
And then I've got to realize why I want to do that. And usually why I want to do that is my character defects of being selfish. Yeah. That's the root of my disease, selfishness and self-centeredness.
Right.
And that's another thing that I got drummed into me was, that you've got to be rid of the selfishness or it kills you.
Yeah.
And to be able to harbor some good old justified resentments, man. As soon as somebody does me wrong, if I dwell on that for too long, all of a sudden they've got some friends.
Yeah, right.
And then the person that cuts me off in traffic gets it.
Yeah, right.
Whoever's there, it comes out sideways, and
it's like all these little ants that just build up, and before you know, you got this big monster. That's where the 12 steps for me are such a big thing, because those monsters don't really appear that often. I'm not saying ever, but you're sort of constantly clearing away things.
Yeah.
There's going to be people listening to your story so far who maybe, or they might be in early recovery themselves. They might be thinking about getting into recovery. They might have friends. And there might be some stigma attached to 12-step fellowship for that word that you just said, higher power.
Yep.
Do you need to believe in God to access a 12-step program?
I think you need to believe in something other than yourself. Because if my best work gets me arrested or in a ditch, or my thinking has made it so that I just lie to myself all the time, and then I realize that I can't, the substance I'm taking in, I can never safely drink, I can never safely use, because it's going to kill me, then I'm raw like a peeled prawn. I'm there. What do I do now? What do I do now? So I have to find something to turn it over to. That's my opinion. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be. It's a God of your own understanding.
Yeah.
It's a power of the universe, the great outdoors, good orderly direction, group of drunks. If I go into it, like somebody says, I'm not powerless, I'm only powerless, and I'm not crazy either. I'm only crazy when I drink. And I say, you're crazy because you drink, because you can't handle it. Mm-hmm. So come into a room that's full of people that were exactly like you, but they haven't drank for 10 months and 10 years or whatever like that. That's more power than you've got. So just give it up for a while and see what happens.
Yeah.
And I think once you get into because I don't think there's that many universal truths, and even though you could say that it was Christian based, that the AA was set up, those guys might have done it. It might have been Christian based. It doesn't have to be narrowed down to that. And they saw that right at the beginning. That's what put the Bill Wilson off of being 12-step by Ebby Thatcher. Was he came in and they thought it was a Christian revival meeting or something like that, This is a God of your own understanding.
Yeah. And there was an atheist in that original group, wasn't there? I think called Jim B.
Yeah.
Not Jim Beam, the whiskey, but Jim B. And he said if you don't add in God as we understood him and then put it in italics, that, I think he turned around to Bill.
So what was his higher power?
You're going to kill him. I believe his higher power was the first word of the steps, we.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm all with that, man.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing is addiction's a disease of isolation.
Yeah.
And as soon as you say we, and you come in and you hear people that have had the same war stories or close to it as you, and you think, oh, it's not just me anymore. And also, if I believe in a higher power, I believe it's in me. And I think almost all the religions say that the kingdom of heaven is within you in some way.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell somebody. I said, man, do you love yourself? And they go, no, man, I've done this and I've done that. And I say, but do you believe in a higher power? Yeah. Do you believe that higher power is in you? Yeah. Well, go look in the mirror till you can see it. And go, hey, man, Ollie, I love you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and that's hard to do.
Sure.
Because I didn't want to. I couldn't even look at myself.
Same.
Before I got sober. It was like, oh, you jerk, you know. Yeah. And I can still do that, man. I can still get in self. I've got a daily reprieve from that critical brain.
Yeah.
And that's another. I heard Tony Robbins talking about a thing. He says that the brain is good at solving problems, therefore is always looking for one.
Yeah.
But the heart is looking for connection as well.
Absolutely. And that's where that we thing comes in.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if anyone is sort of a hardened atheist and they're interested in 12-step, you know, that absolutely does count because me on my own with a problem, I've got very little power. But then if I ring you up and have a coffee, you know, it's like power in numbers and then you add more people. And I think that power that two people with any common kind of mental health problem has is sort of authenticity, love. You know, these are actually spiritual concepts.
Yeah.
Like we can't, if you've got a dog and I've got a dog, we can't measure who loves their dog more.
Yeah.
You know, there is no love-ometer because it's a spirit thing.
Yeah, man.
So actually just connection itself for some people can be spiritual. Just connecting with another human being can be a spiritual experience. Sure. So yeah, I think if anyone's listening to this who's got that as a barrier, and I certainly did, you know, a decade ago, it really doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Working in rehabs and people, you know, in sort of early recovery, hoping that they're going to stay sober, they usually throw tons and tons of questions at me.
Yeah.
And obviously you've lived a life 44 years alcohol-free. So I just wonder if I can throw some of these at you.
Sure.
Right. People often say to me, how will I have fun without alcohol? So Tom, last 44 years, have you had any fun?
I've had a lot of fun.
Okay, that's good.
Because I was going to tell you, when I showed up at an AA meeting and I heard somebody say, "Oh, you're going to have a life beyond your wildest dreams,
right.
Tom." And you know, I'm sitting in a drafty church hall on a Friday night when I should be out partying, man. And I'm drinking weak coffee, like instant coffee. And I'm saying, "Yeah, right." But within 2 months of me getting sober, I went to a jam session at this Alano club, and there was all these LA musicians, and there was this pushy little trumpet player from New York named Normie Faye, and he's going, "Let's play this song." He's not like one of the like Woody Allen. "Let's play this. Let's play that song. Oh God, let's do this. Let's do that." And I almost told this guy to shut up. And I was like, "Shut up, man. Let somebody else call a tune." And I said, "What do you think, God?" And he goes, "Shut your mouth and play the bass." So I leave it alone. 2 weeks after that, I'm down at the Musicians Union, and he goes, "Hey, Tom, you want to go on a cruise ship?" So within 9 months of me being sober, I'm out on a cruise ship floating around. I've given up my funky flat in town, just have to park my van under a bridge in San Pedro, and I'm eating lobster every Thursday, and just having, it was amazing. And then I met my wife, Jackie, who was working on the ship too, and ended up, you know, staying sober, having some kids in LA, and then coming over here, and it is a life beyond my wildest dreams. And also in LA, I did some acting, some voiceover work. And then once I got over here, because of my accent, it took off. And because the musicians that I knew, I ended up working at the Ronnie Scott's in Birmingham in the house band there. And it's just, and the president of the union was one of the bands I ended up playing with. So I instantly got into the MU. And then at Ronnie Scott's, the girl behind the desk also worked at immigration in Birmingham. And I'm standing in line, about 20 people in back, and she goes, "Come here," like, you know, whatever. And she goes, "Pretend like I'm giving you a hard time." And then she goes, "Give me your passport." And then they send it to me 2 weeks later with the permanent residency sticker in it. Stuff like that happened all the time. It's just like it just got laid out.
Yeah.
Because I did the right thing.
Yeah, there's so much good karma attached to recovery. It's unreal.
I didn't want to raise my kids in LA. That's what it was. But that was just a personal choice. But yeah.
Something that people are really worried about as well, and I know it's not advisable to start dating too early in early recovery for most people, unless, of course, you're already in a relationship. But it's often not advised, right? Just to kind of chill for a bit.
Okay.
If you're doing the 12-step program, maybe wait till you're at least at step 9 or whatever. But obviously, at some point, people want to date, right?
Yeah.
And it sounds like you did that. You just said you met your wife And what was that like? I mean, I've experienced that sober myself, but what was that like for you, sort of dating and being sober?
I didn't date in AA when I first got sober. I got that gig on the cruise ship, and I met my wife, who was so far from an alcoholic. She could leave half a glass of wine there, just really make me angry. God, at least drink that stuff.
Mine's exactly the same.
Yeah. But after my wife passed away, and I was crying in a meeting one time because I'm like the single parent for these. I mean, two of the boys were 18 and 20. Taylor, Taylor, but my daughter and were 11 and 13. And one day it just got to me, and I'm like, like that. And then my wife, Izzy, my current wife, Izzy, made the mistake of sending me a text. Oh, sorry, you're going through all that other stuff. That kind of like started us communicating, but it wasn't like dating in AA. I wouldn't even call it that. It was more like just somebody. I'd known her through her sobriety, and they're just as friends. And at one point, sponsored somebody that she was going out with, and so there was nothing going on. Yeah,
sure.
But it's just after a while, but I mean, I think, and even that, it was hard.
Yeah,
it was hard because she wasn't used to being in a relationship, and she and I had kids, and she also, if somebody's single, they've got their own kind of structure to their life already.
Yeah,
and we had a rocky road before we finally got married, and it was great. Because there's always room to change, and I had to change the way I became selfish again, that sort of a thing.
Yeah.
And I had regrets and stuff, but I've worked through them. But I've seen people, and I think we weren't able to get married until we were both just like, maybe this will work, maybe this won't. Yeah. We have to be independent people, because two independent people can become interdependent.
Yeah, right.
But a lot of times when I see people come in and they haven't even done the steps yet, and so they just get another relationship. And then that becomes their new drug.
Right. They just use that to fix something outside.
So the analogy is like two birds with broken wings, and neither of them is going to fly.
Yeah. That's right. I mean, when it's an anniversary, we're friends on Facebook. You post these beautiful pictures of your wife who sadly passed away, and it always strikes a chord because you often post pictures where she looks so young and all of that. And obviously, you got through that without a drink as well. That happened in your...
Yeah, we were together over 28 years. And I even at the end, I mean, there was some prescription medication up on the window, and the dark side says, "Oh, look at that! You could get out of this pain right now." Yeah. And I just told the nurses, I said, "Take that out of there,"
Yeah.
And that's with many, many years. So I'm not saying that. And that's another thing people say, "Oh, I'm only this far away from a drink." I'm actually 12 steps away from a drink.
Sure, absolutely.
I have to forget that I'm helping people, and I've had a spiritual awakening as a result of doing it.
Yeah.
I have to forget that I said my prayers and meditations for the day, and that I've made amends for what I did yesterday, and that I've made amends to those people, and that I've tried to keep my, the character defects out of the way enough to help others, and that I've divulged all my deepest, darkest secrets, and that I no longer need a higher power. I'm going to run it on my own. I have to go through that process before I take a drink.
Yeah.
But they say that alcohol is cunning, baffling, and powerful. All drugs are.
Yeah.
And they're patient. Like I hear guys make an analogy, it's like, well, I'm over here sober, my disease is doing push-ups over there, just waiting.
Yeah.
For something bad to happen. And I've seen it happen. I've seen people have a bereavement, and then next thing you know, they're at it again.
Yes. I mean, I think, your story is just so inspiring on so many levels. I mean, obviously, we've just touched on some of those nice questions like, have you had any fun in the last 4 years? And, what was it like dating without drinking? But to hear that you've gone through, the passing of your wife, and as you say, you were together so long and you didn't pick up a drink, I think is incredible. And it's amazing to hear that. It's inspiring to me to hear that, because I've gone through some tough things in the last 9 years, but nothing that's come close to that.
Yeah.
Was it the program that got you through? Like, how did you? I don't expect you to go into that period too much.
Well, the program, because she was sick for 5 years,
right? And
there were times during that when I was a carer, I guess, that I was run down, and it was people in the program said, "Man, you look terrible. You better go eat some chicken." You better get some sleep.
Yeah.
And luckily her family was great too. They helped out and everything. But it was program people that kind of kept my head straight and also continuing to do that. But and after she passed away, the program was there. And also because I've got kids, that's the thing is if I realize the root of my disease is selfishness, how selfish would it be to drink if I've got 4 kids depending on me, And also when you sponsor too, when you sponsor other people, that creates an extra little layer of protection, I think.
Yeah. Well, if I obviously hope I don't ever go through that pain, with my own wife, but if anything like that ever was to happen, I guess with parents or anything else, you are an inspiration to me. I'm just going to absolutely lay that out, and someone that I hope I can ring if I ever needed support to know that you've gone through it. Because to me, that is just epic, that you didn't pick up a drink through that period of time and that 5 years in the build up. I've got a friend in recovery as well who's had a terminal illness the last few years. And, I just asked him straight out. I just said, how are you not picking a drink up? And he said, I don't want to miss a second of my life. I want to be present for everything. And even though I'm going to these sort of very dark places of things that can happen in life, I think it's important for people to hear that you can literally get through anything without a drink and be stronger for it. Yeah.
Well, the road gets narrower too, I think.
Right.
The things the longer that you're sober, the less bad behavior you can tolerate in yourself.
Yeah.
Even,
that's so true.
I mean, and I have crazy dreams sometimes. I think, why did I have that crazy dream? And I go, well, what were you watching last night? And I have to start being more accountable of what I put into my brain and what comes out of my mouth. And I still get that wrong.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've got to be so careful what I put into my brain for the last couple of hours before I go to sleep and when I get up in the morning, because I'm so sensitive to all that stuff. It's so great talking about this and, in this amazing life that you've had in recovery, because I think it'll inspire so many people. I mean, people that are early on, they're just jumping ahead all the time. Yeah, it's really interesting in the rehabs because often, when people are very early on, they'll sort of, a typical thing would be, say, a 37-year-old sort of saying to me, what about my 40th birthday?
Right.
And it's always the same thing. It's like, well, you're not there yet. And I think the sad thing about that is you talked about addiction being like a liar earlier on. It's obviously something I'm big on. Is it's also lying to you about your future self. Because what about a version of a future self that doesn't care about alcohol anymore, that doesn't care about drugs anymore, that is happy, joyous and free, that is, put in a place of neutrality and all of those promises. But what addiction says is that won't happen for you. You're going to always wake up in the future craving alcohol. So that's why the future looks so blue.
I've heard people say that at meetings.
Yeah.
I've seen a newcomer come in and sit next to a guy who's been in 5 years, but all he's done is gone to meetings. They go, oh, when do these cravings leave? And they go, they never do. And they go, really? And then somebody's got to pipe in and say, well, they never do if you don't do the stuff.
Yeah, right.
If you don't clear away the wreckage of your past and start helping other people.
Yeah.
Because that's the deal too, is I've heard people say, if I couldn't get the same buzz or better from sobriety that I got from the drugs and the alcohol, I'd go back to it.
Yeah. And
when you sponsor somebody and they come up to you and they go, man, I got my job back, I got my kids back, I got my wife back, I can't thank you a million. Oh, you did this. And I say, it's nothing to do with me, man. I was just the vehicle, that gave you what was given to me, a new blueprint for life.
Yeah,
where you're helping other people, and they say it is a selfish program, but that's the best way to be selfish, I think.
I appreciate this is a personal question. Well, probably all my questions have been personal. Let's be frank. I would imagine in the last 44 years you've been close to relapse a couple of times. Is that true? I'm just making an assumption. Wow.
No.
Never.
No. I did all my relapsing before the April 7th, 1980. I got it out of my system.
Right.
April 5th, 1970, 1980. I'm giving myself 10 years. I was on the bandstand. I was playing one song, and the band was playing another song. and that's after that time that I'd gone around and I'd taken the 90-day chip and went back out. And the next day, April 6th, I talked my girlfriend into letting me have one more beer. And at that time, Foster's made a can about that big.
Right.
It was like,
so you had a big one.
And I came out and just one more like that, and that was it.
Right.
That was it. And because the thing is like they say, oh, surely you must be, and even what you're saying there, oh, I can't believe you made it through that without drinking. I've been honest enough with myself to know that I can never safely drink again, and it's always going to end in carnage.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. If you told somebody that had a strawberry addiction, or a peanut addiction or something, or not addiction, an allergy.
Yeah.
You tell them, oh, it's different. You don't have that allergy anymore. Go ahead and eat a bunch of peanuts, or get, some of the bee stings or whatever like that. Oh, go ahead. It's going to be different today. They would think you're nuts.
Yeah.
They'd say, get away from me. That's going to kill me.
Yeah.
And I know alcohol will kill me. So I haven't got close to that. But they talk about emotional unsobriety.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of that.
Sure.
Perfectionism with self-loathing.
It's interesting you say that. How does that, just going back to you being a creative, obviously, and a voice actor and an actor and a musician, is there any sort of overlap there? Sort of perfectionism, self-loathing. How have you found the creative industries kind of have either aided your recovery or made it more challenging?
Music has totally saved it. Music has been the thing for me. Being in a band, and also there's the role of the bass. Even if my head's telling me, "Oh, you're playing terrible. You're not doing this right. You're not as good as him." Blah 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 blah. The bottom line is is I've got to lay down the next fat note for everybody to sound good off of. And I did a gig last night. The drummer came in and he was all mad about this and mad about that. And by the third tune, he was just smiling, big old grin, because we all five of us were in the same place. We just became something bigger and better. The we that you talk about in the program, I got that from music. Voiceovers have been a happy medium between music and acting for me. Acting's ruthless. Those commercial auditions in L.A. I remember walking out one time and the casting lady goes, "Nah, didn't even let me say it." She's like, "Nah," and over here they're much nicer, But the whole thing about you're only as good as your last play or your last movie, and just that you've got to get some tough skin. And I've heard you on your different shows, talking to actors about that, where that's their main thing. I think it would be a lot harder for me to be sober longer or to feel good, happy, joyous, and free if that was my main thing.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's also just my own fault that I haven't put that much energy into becoming a better actor. It's kind of just fallen into and that's why it's been such a great long crawl to the middle.
I mean, well, you can say if that's the middle. I don't know where I'm at, but I don't know if you've noticed this. There's a lot more auditioning now with voiceovers, right?
Yeah.
When I first started out, I first started doing voiceovers when I was about 8, actually. But coming out of drama school, that's one thing that I loved about voiceovers, that I never auditioned for anything. My agent would just go, "You're booked to do this thing," but you seem to audition for everything now with voiceovers.
Well, it's still. I mean, the last couple of games that I've done, I got them straight away. But then there was another one where it was a big casting call, but the producers had probably heard everybody that they were bringing in. So it's still better than a cold call, as a cold acting call, where they've never heard you. That sort of thing, or seen your work or whatever. Like,
are people mainly just pulling you in?
You go into an office and there's 10 other guys in a gray suit with bald head. Oh man, here we go again.
So people are more pulling you in because you got such a big body of work. Are people just sort of calling you up and saying, "Hey, do you want to work on this thing?" Or are you still having to go through like a process? Or
I think word of mouth has been great.
Yeah.
But I've got a great agent as well.
Right.
Who's put me up for a lot of stuff. Those cartoons we were talking about, but I think after a while you get some momentum, word of mouth, that sort of thing, and then you become all typecast. Of course, I'm always typecast as an American. When I got over here, the radio stuff. I was like, let's get him for the cowboy ad. Yeah, let's get him for the gangster ad. Whatever.
Yeah. We're going to get the full repertoire now. This is great. You've got 2 voice actors now with a mic. This could go down a very dark road, couldn't it? You know what it's like?
Have a cowboy off.
Yeah, okay. Sure, we can do that. It's good to see you. Welcome to School of Rock Bottom.
I really like it here, punk. Oh, wait. Wee. Well, circle the wagons there, Ollie.
I told you it could go down this road. I better rein it back in, hadn't I? Just going back to your recovery for a bit, if that's all right. I'll never forget my first sponsor. He got to 30 years sober. And I said, how have you done it? And he said, a day at a time.
Yep.
And I thought he was crazy. I was like, what do you mean a day at a time? This doesn't make any sense. Now I understand what it means.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you now, 44 years on, a day at a time? What does that mean?
I heard a great share not long ago where the guy says, I'm either in my memory or my imagination or the moment. If I'm in my memory, I'm either thinking about what I could have done, what I should have done. If I'm in my imagination, what I need to do, what I hope I get, blah, 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 blah. But if I'm right here, that's it.
Yeah.
And that's all there is this moment, and you that's been written under the guise of so many things,
100%.
And so that's the deal and what I said too is like a lot of what's kept me sober is I know to drink is to die one way or the other. And hopefully it would just be me. I mean, it could be, I could take somebody else down with me too, because like I said, when I would black out, I would jump in the car. But when somebody comes in and they've got the craving still on them, I say, man, if you can't make it a day, make it an hour. If you can't make it an hour, make it 10 minutes.
Yeah.
In fact, let's have a breath. 1, 2, 3. That's all we got, man.
Yeah.
All we got right there.
Wow. It was interesting when you talked about imagination and you said, that you're in what you need to do and blah, blah, blah. You didn't say, this is going to go wrong. You didn't sort of catastrophize.
That too.
That too. Yeah.
You ever heard of Emmett Fox?
Yes, but I don't know why.
Scientific sort of Christian belief.
Right.
Emmett Fox was, he wrote the Sermon on the Mount, and he wrote The Golden Key, and Bill and Bob read his stuff.
Okay.
Supposedly before they wrote the big book. I'm not a historian, so if somebody knows different, fine. But Emmett Fox was back 20s and the 30s. And he did another thing called the 7-day mental diet. And he just breaks it down. He says, if you can take each thought captive and not dwell on anything negative for 7 days, you can change your life. You can change your habits of negativity. Doesn't mean that if you sit down at a table and people are gossiping about somebody that's not there, you don't have to say, hey, man, you guys shouldn't be doing that. It's negative or like that. You just say, they ask, what do you think about something? Well, I don't know, like that. And in your head, you say, God bless them, whatever, like that. And if you like objectify women or men or something like that, somebody's walking down the street and you start to get some lascivious thoughts or something like that, you just think, here comes another spiritual being having physical experience. God bless you, and may the Lord bless you on your way, blah, blah, blah. Just if you can do that for 7 days, it's amazing. Wow. Because that's the deal is what I resist persists. You ever heard that one?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
So you think, I can't drink. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to drink. You're going to drink. But if you say, I'm going to do something instead, I'm going to help somebody instead. Do the opposite. And that's with but I mean the negative thoughts. It's whether I dwell on them or not. And he says something about like you're sitting in front of a fire and an ember jumps out, lands on your shirt, and you go like that. Didn't even burn your shirt. Sits there for a minute, starts going in there, Yeah. That guy's a jerk. Oh, damn, it's too late,
Right.
So it's about me controlling and doing and changing my thoughts quick enough.
Yeah.
And that's what and also when people say, and I'm not and I think when you come into the program, 12-step program, you can have mental health issues that much.
Yeah.
And then maybe once you do your steps, you still got that much. And I went to hypnotherapy when I was 13 years sober just because I was starting to scream and yell too much around my kids.
Right.
And it was anger sort of a thing. And I went through, it was almost like a 4-step where this therapist took me, where do what happened here, what happened? I told her some of the horrible things that happened around my house when I was a kid and things that happened later on. And then at one point she goes, where are you right now? And I said, I'm 10 years old and my dad's supposed to pick me up. He's 20 minutes late. And I think he's wrecked the car and he's been hurt or he's dead. In my head, I fantasize this horrible thing.
Right.
And he pulls up, he's got a can of Colt 45 stout malt liquor between his legs. And I say, Dad, I thought you got killed. He goes, shut up and get in the back, man. And drives off. And I go, it's probably nothing. She goes, could be something. And I go out and get in the car and I can't drive, man. I just break down. I go, because I had to honor that little kid.
Yeah.
At that point,
Right.
and I've got a picture of myself as a 3-year-old kid up on the wall before I knew any of this stuff that happened. And I have to go back there and I have to honor that kid, and say, you're all right, man. I got you covered.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like if I start thinking a whole bunch of stuff, I'm not honoring him. I'm not honoring that part of me. That's just I think we're all like raw diamonds when we're born. And then a whole bunch of crap gets loaded, stuck on top of it. And that's whether you can scrape it off enough, just enough of it to help somebody else, then that helps more come off of it.
That's really interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a kind of misconception sometimes, I think, with recovery that you're sort of changing into something else. I think that might be true on some level, but in my experience anyway, it's been more about letting stuff go.
Absolutely.
Getting rid of that crap. And then I always felt like I was this big ball of crap. And then when I let it all go, that actually I found there was a diamond in there the whole time. It's interesting that you used that analogy because that's something I've always used as well. Yeah. I must admit, I used to be terrible for living in the future or in the past.
Yeah.
And, on this sort of 9-year journey that I've been on, I'm pretty good at staying in the day. It's still a work in progress for me to get in the moment. I'm trying to get in the moment more. Do you feel like you're living in the moment most of the time? Where are you at with that?
I think I have access to the now a lot more than I used to, just because of that.
Yeah.
Let's take a breath.
Yeah.
Here we are. That's the Ollie Mason podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you should do the jingle for it.
Yeah.
Right there. That would be fantastic. I said this.
Don't drink that beer and listen to Ollie.
We're going to TikTok that.
Yeah.
We're just going to whack that in.
Put down the pipe.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
We need to do a lot of things. Yeah, we could be here all day.
Ollie Mason coming down the pipe so you can put down the pipe. Call now.
And depending on where you're listening to this podcast, pipe can mean different things.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Whatever you're strung out on, man.
There's an amazing...
And also these mugs, man. These are cooking.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I know. I've really upgraded now. I've got these mugs. I think the algorithm has worked out, for me when I go online, that I quite dig recovery and sobriety and mental health and all these things. Everyone seems to be a sober coach right now.
Right.
Which is great. And it's sort of almost cool to be in recovery or sober. People aren't sort of saying they're X amount of time, sober, or they're sort of saying alcohol free. And there's sort of this narrative that is coming around that's really positive.
Yeah.
I sometimes get a little bit worried when I see someone sort of advocating non-alcoholic drinks. Now, I'm not against them. I understand that maybe someone that hasn't got full-blown alcoholism, actually non-alcoholic beverages are probably a really good thing. Yeah. I understand that there's a certain type of drinker that maybe is not a full-blown alcoholic, that maybe is more problem drinker, where that could be a really useful tool. So I'm not against them, but it does worry me sometimes if it's full-blown alcoholism.
Yep.
For me, I just feel like they can be quite dangerous.
Yeah.
But I'm also open-minded enough to know that we're all different. Where do you stand with non-alcoholic?
Well, just for me, I think that non-alcoholic drinks are for non-alcoholics.
Right.
And for people that ask me what they think about, I'm just going to have this, whatever it is, Beck's Zero or Guinness Zero or whatever like that, and I'll say, okay, man, I'm gonna chop up some baby laxative, and because I want to do a line,
right.
just like the old day, and I'm gonna roll up some oregano. It's not really weed, just like you have your beer, go ahead. Yeah, man. Yeah, isn't this great? We're like glory days, man.
Yeah, that's how I see it as well. Yeah, I agree completely.
If it's something that's going to kill me, why would I want that taste in my mouth again?
Yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
But also with the caveat that I know everyone's different. I don't want to be narrow-minded about it. But it does feel like for me...
And whatever works. That's the whole thing too, is that there's no monopolies on sobriety, and what works for somebody might not work for somebody else.
Yeah, I can completely understand that someone hasn't got full-blown alcoholism, that non-alcoholic drinks are a great thing.
Yeah.
I just worry if someone stumbles across that online who's, got that real severe type alcoholism, that it's just going to set the craving off.
I tried it a couple times before I finally got sober, man. Yeah. I drank 2 of those and I go, I can't stand these. Yeah. And I had to have a real one to get the taste out of my mouth.
Yeah, right.
Like kissing through a screen door, you know what I'm saying, boy? Like taking a shower with your coat on.
Well, my first sponsor said non-alcoholic drinks were like going to a prostitute for a kiss. I'll never forget him saying that.
I like that.
That made me laugh. Yeah. Sorry if that offends anybody, but hopefully it's useful. But yeah, I think to me, it's sort of similar to, like you say, getting a load of baby powder and let's go out and snort it in the loos. Like it doesn't, what's the point?
Oh, it's just like the old days. So,
yeah.
No, it isn't.
Yeah. Obviously, someone who's got 10 plus years using them is in a very different place to someone who's 10 days into recovery.
No,
So
there's a responsibility. And that's why I just really want to emphasize I'm not the spokesperson for anything.
No, me either.
But those meetings that I do go to, I've seen people show up and they go, oh, yeah, I came in here 20 years ago and I haven't had a drink since. I just want you to know that everything's great for me. And I'm thinking, well, thanks, because you could have just killed somebody. Because you might be talking to somebody, if the book talks about the heavy drinker, given sufficient cause, can walk away from it.
Yeah.
And never drink again. I've got a friend like that. I've got a couple friends like that where their wife says, hey, man, it's the booze or me. And they go, okay, I'd rather have you. But a real alcoholic would say, see ya, sweetie. or would self-destruct and she'd have to leave, that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
That's why, I've shared where I say, I'm a real alcoholic. Or I'm a recovered alcoholic.
Right.
They say, how can you do that? But the book says this is to show you precisely how we have recovered.
Yeah.
But it's on a daily basis, contingent upon my spiritual connection.
Yeah. And that's another big hot topic, isn't it, within the recovery community? Some people say recovered, some people don't.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's all about.
It's not vanity. That's what you get a lot of times. Like, people say, "Oh, you're real alcoholic. You're real recovered." The book says this is how we recovered.
Yeah.
And it also says, "What about the real alcoholic?" So the guy that can come in the meeting and he hasn't done any of the steps, and he stayed off it for 20 years. Great. Far out, but to come in there where there's somebody else listening. And it's another thing too is a spiritual experience through microdosing psilocybin. Have you heard that one?
No, what's that?
Yeah, psilocybin is a hallucinogen.
Oh, okay. I'm with you.
And I heard somebody say, "Oh yeah, I think it helped me have a spiritual experience or something like that." Right. And great, But you tell that to somebody that psychedelic drugs were part of their addiction, and that leads them back to something that's going to kill them.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's great that we keep sort of going back to what our experience is and that we're not a spokesperson. But I think it's really important to share what our experiences are so that it can help the next person. I'm just aware of time because we're nearly out of it. I mean, the last hour is absolutely flying by. Just briefly, just to end on this, if that's okay. If there's someone listening to this who is in full-blown denial still and they're starting to come out of it and they're thinking about getting sober and they're really scared about what it could look like, have you got any kind of like final kind of words speaking directly into the ear of somebody that's kind of right on the cliff edge of hitting the bottle or getting into recovery?
You're worth saving. You're worth saving. And I didn't think I was at one point. And that's the other lie that alcohol can tell you. Because first of all, I have to identify the problem. And the founders of the 12-step programs knew that. They had to say, do you think you can ever safely drink again? And if you say, no, I can't because I metabolize it slower and it's going to kill me, then you're committing suicide every time you try. But the self will say, you're not even worth it, so go ahead and do it again. But that's the connection with a higher power is, and it can be your conscience in the beginning. I always say that, man. Wasn't there a voice saying, don't buy the vodka, don't buy the vodka? And everybody goes, yeah. Okay, well, have that be God until there's something else, man. Right. You say, am I worth saving? There's got to be a big yes sign up there. And then that thing about hugging yourself until you can see the higher powers, know that you're worth it.
Yeah.
And also know that you're never alone, because you said that we thing, is I mean, if I go to the doctor and I tell him I'm drinking too much, he's going to say, well, maybe just cut it down to 10 units. And I'll say, can I have all my units on a Friday night at 8 o'clock? And he'll go, no. And he'll go, well, take these pills. And I said, well, is that going to make it so that I clean up the wreckage of my past and start helping other people? He goes, just go to the pharmacy, get out of here. And if I go to the therapist, you go, oh, tell me that stuff about your mom again. For me, I needed to do that stuff later on, but I had to get clear of the fact that addiction was going to kill me. But I would just say that there's hope.
Yeah.
There's hope. And like you said, and you agreed with what I said, is that we're all raw diamonds. We're all connected. We're all connected. That's what I believe. And there's and also to believe that there's good and bad in the world. There's positive and negative. So if I've got to stick to the light,
100%.
We went to a kind of a place where you learn how to meditate, and there was a picture of a woman, just her head, and she's shooting into this bright light, but behind her it's pitch black. So which way am I facing? That's it. So
look into the light.
And I'm so glad we ended that with a cool voice. That's amazing. Oh, Tom, thank you so much for the last hour and actually the whole morning, because we've met up and had a coffee and
pleasure,
a catch
man.
up. You're so inspiring to me as well, and the journey that you've been on. And I wish you all the best with your career. I hope you keep smashing that and doing lots of different things.
Thanks, Ollie.
And I'm so pleased that when you heard, happy, joyous and free when you were 25 years old and you didn't believe it in that dark church basement that you talked about earlier, that it is actually come to be and is and still continues to be. That's amazing. So yeah, thanks again massively.
You're welcome.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us for the last hour. I'm going to be putting loads of stuff in the show notes where you can follow Tom and engage with his amazing work that he does there as well. If you're listening to this on Apple, please leave a review, or Spotify, give us 5 stars. And if it's YouTube, hit subscribe, like, share it, all of that pitchy stuff. Please do all of that. It really, really, really helps. And as I always promise, I will see you in 2 weeks' time. Until then, look after yourself and thank you.